Got the roll call? Oh. Annie. Blue. Hey.
Hello. Yes.
The call. We don't have that list.
The what?
We're looking at the roll call list.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can email it.
Is
that the easiest?
We need that list.
Okay.
Just doing a quick sound check. Cecilia Holden, can you hear me out there?
Yes, sir.
And can you see me?
Yes, sir.
Lovely. Thank you.
Annie, we have the list.
Okay. Okay, good.
We've got it. Okay.
Awesome.
I gotta add that.
Okay.
Okay, I'm giving the file.
And you let me know when we're ready.
I think we're ready to go.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Want to thank everyone that could be here. I know that we all have challenges sometimes, and I'm trying to make my way to Raleigh. We pulled off at a Starbucks. We had some complications at home and couldn't get down there. So we've got 3 phones and a computer to try to make this work on my end. But again, we want to welcome everyone and thank you for being here and participation and meeting to call in and be virtual. It could be a little tough at times, but I think we'll keep it going. We're going to ask everyone to keep your phone, your camera on your device, whatever you have, and want everyone to engage and simply, if you can come off mute and raise your hand or simply type in a note in the chat area, we'll be able to recognize you. And if you will, please just stay muted when you're not speaking. We've got the roll call here, and I'm going to go over the member list as soon as I can pull it up. Here we go. We want to start with Secretary Lilly. Oh,
I'm here, Mr. Co-Chair.
Well, we thank you. And before I go next, I think we all give our condolences to Dr. Cox for the loss of his mother. And Jeff, we want you to know we're praying for you, and you're in our thoughts and prayers, and I'm very, very sorry. Very sorry.
Appreciate that, Senator. She's in a better place, but none of us is ever ready to lose our mother, are we? So I appreciate your kind words and all the text and messages. I've gotten hundreds and hundreds. So I really appreciate the support, my friend.
Well, thank you. I just want you to know you're definitely in our thoughts and prayers. We're never ready for that. Anyway, I'm trying to make this thing work the best I can. I'm going to go down this list, and if you can simply just let us know you're on it, greatly appreciated. And then we're going to go back to our 4 members that didn't make it at the last meeting and ask them to introduce themselves. But first, we'll go down and start with Andrea Allard.
I'm here.
Representative Austin.
Here.
Senator Applewhite.
Here, Mr. Chair.
Hey, Val. Mark Bolton.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Chad. Chad.
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. JB Buxton.
Here.
Sherry Carpenter. Sherry Carpenter. We'll do like the Lieutenant Governor. We'll go over it 3 times. Gary Carpenter. Okay, Brian Floyd.
I'm here, Mr. Chair.
Cecilia Holden.
Here.
Thank you. Steve Mange.
Here.
Edsel McDonald. Edsel McDonald.
Here.
Trey Michael.
Here.
Anna Perkinson.
Here.
Travis Reed. Dr. Reeves. Okay. Eric Shouts.
I'm here.
Tammy Simmons.
Here, but no screen available. I'm on a phone.
Okay. Karen Wade.
Here.
Dr. Thomas Walker.
Here.
Wendy Walker Fox.
Here.
Tom West.
Here.
Representative Winslow. Matthew Winslow is not available. Okay, thank you all for being here, and yeah, we've got some members that weren't here last time. We'd like for them to introduce themselves, and we'll start with Andrea Allard.
Hello, everyone. I'm Andrea Allard from the North Carolina Department of Military and Veteran Affairs. I work with transitioning service members as well as all life transitions with military spouses and veterans, whether it's to education and employment or back the other way, whether it's to caregiving and ultimately to our survivors. So I am there with all the transitions.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you joining the task force committee. Thank you. Senator Applewhite.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Senator Val Applewhite. I represent Senate District 19. That's in Cumberland County. So I represent most of Fayetteville and Hope Mills and a whole lot of the veterans and active duty members from Fort Bragg. Myself, I'm a retired Air Force, having served 20 years on active duty. And then my oldest son followed my footsteps. So he's on active duty right now in the Air Force. And thank you to whoever sent the notes out. Since I missed the first meeting, the notes were very comprehensive. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. Next, we have Brian Floyd.
Good morning. I'm Brian Floyd. I serve as the President and Chief Operating Officer for ECU Health. We are a health system of 9 hospitals in Eastern North Carolina. One of those is a 1,000-bed academic medical center. We train physicians and about 5 or 6 college partnerships, from pharmacy to nurses to a host of different disciplines in healthcare workforce. One of the reasons I think I'm involved in this is also we have a deep focus in trying to steer the academic work we do and the training in our clinical departments into the Tier 1 communities of rural North Carolina. And so by doing so, we not only, of course, get a benefit of retention in the state, but we view that as part of our mission to improve the vitality and the well-being of these communities. And it starts with getting kids an opportunity to start a career in their rural homes where they can stay and care for their loved ones. And so the 9 hospitals, the about 150 clinics that are spread around Eastern North Carolina, we're about 20,000 team members. And we have wanted to be in this kind of conversation about how do we help the state learn the uniqueness of rurality, even in something as complicated as healthcare, and hope we can learn together how to use what we're doing to help sponsor workforce and apprenticeship programs across the state.
Thank you, Brian. So, did he ever join? I don't think he has. Well, thank you so much. We do have a little business first to take care of. Our first meeting, notice those minutes shared in advance. I hope everyone has had a chance to read those, go over the minutes. We would ask for a motion first and a second to accept the minutes as read, or has been provided. I'm sorry.
This is Senator Applewhite, motion to accept the minutes as presented.
First,
JB Buxton, second.
okay. A second from Big Buxton. Thank you so much. I guess all in favor, if you will, please. What we would do would be raise your hand, or just if you send a motion that you accept the minutes, just raise your hand, please. Thank you. Okay. Well, if there's no objection, we'll move on to item 5, and I think everyone in your pre-meeting materials received a conflict of interest language, and in accordance with State Ethics Act, it's the duty of everyone to be engaged in conflicts of interest and appearance of interest. And I need to read this entire statement to everyone so that let me pull it back up. Pull it back. All right. It is the duty of every committee member to avoid both conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflict of interest. If any committee member or any known conflict of interest or is aware of facts that might create the appearance of such a conflict of interest with respect to materials coming before the committee today, please identify the conflict or the facts that might create the appearance of a conflict to ensure that any inappropriate participation in the matter may be avoided. If at any time any new matter arises that appears to be a conflict during the meeting, please be sure to identify it at that time. Does anyone have any conflicts now? Or if you do, just raise those so that we can address them. The Governor's Council will provide training on while serving on this council, including open meetings, public records requirements, council members on April 29th and May 2nd. This training is required for council members who are not state government employees. So if you are a state government employee, you do not need to attend. If you can't attend either of these two meetings, the governor's office is looking forward to a third meeting in May, and we'll share it very soon. Does anyone have any questions for me? If not, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Cox. Thank you for your patience, and I want to thank Starbucks here for allowing us to stop and take care of this at this time. Dr. Cox, you will take over, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Settle. I appreciate you getting us kicked off and working through the ethics and roll call and so forth. I want to open up by just sharing a few words from the governor himself. He obviously is not able to be here with us today, but continues to be engaged in this work and keeping up with the work that we're doing. So here's a statement from the governor. The governor continues to appreciate the council's time, expertise, and engagement. He was pleased to hear about the results of the first meeting and looks forward to the work ahead. Although he can't be here today, the council really digs into the goals, I have a few notes from the governor that I believe will benefit our work today and moving forward. So first, Governor Stein has a goal of being the best state in the nation for business and providing economic opportunity for all North Carolinians. We cannot achieve either without a strong workforce. North Carolina's workforce is the key to 1, fueling our state's continued economic growth, 2, ensuring employers have the talent they need, and 3, expanding pathways to careers for North Carolinians that support thriving families and communities across our state. As we continue our work, we should keep this higher purpose in mind. That is, the specific categories outlined in the executive order: credential and degree attainment, labor market alignment, apprenticeships, etc., plus the additional ones that this council will create, are not really the goals. They are a means to get us to the real end and overarching goal that we all share: opportunity for North Carolinians to build careers across the state and for businesses to grow and succeed, equaling more prosperity and promise for our state. Simply said, it's not the degree or the apprenticeship itself, it's the opportunity that it represents. Governor Stein has said that no state will outwork North Carolina when it comes to workforce development, and he means it. It's the council's opportunity to define exactly what work North Carolina should be doing. Because workforce development is not a point in time effort, it requires collaboration. It will take the full engagement of the council to identify the goals and strategies we need and to execute on the same. This council has the makeup to get things done. With the leadership of Secretary Lilly, Senator Settle, and myself, our educational partners, the General Assembly, employers, and others, you are on this council because of the expertise you bring, maybe in a specific workforce program or a specific population of the workforce, or maybe in your day-to-day employment challenges in your industry. In setting the goals and strategies that will help guide our state's workforce development, this council has a real opportunity. When the goals and strategies are set, as members of this council, you should see your very best ideas and your very biggest concerns addressed in the work of this council. If you do not, it will have been a lost opportunity for this state to benefit from your expertise. So the governor is encouraging us to really engage here. He created this council and asked each of us to be a part of it because he believes we have the ingredients in North Carolina to set the national standard in workforce development. He has tasked us with outlining the plan forward. And he is committed as our governor to doing all in his power to make sure that the work of this council is put into practice for the benefit of North Carolina's workers and employers alike. So I appreciate that from the governor. Give us some guidance here. So moving on. So looking back briefly at meeting one, I want to thank everybody on the council for your engagement so far. Obviously, we have a lot of work left to do, but we're pleased to hear some early consensus around goals and some interesting ideas about how we can dig in to help North Carolina meet those goals. We are cognizant of our timeline here. So today, to keep the council moving forward, we're going to share our recommendations on the 6 specific goals identified in Governor Stein's executive order. These recommended goals are based on the feedback we heard from the first meeting and since, and we believe they represent goals we can all champion, but we want your feedback here today as well. We're also going to preview some additional goals that were not specifically called out in the executive order, but that we believe are important. Again, we want your input on these as well. We'll have more time to engage later, but if anybody has any pressing comments or questions you'd like to pose now, you can. And now and later, please do use the chat feature if you have things that you'd like to make sure to get into the conversation, because we'll be able to monitor that chat and make sure all those questions get answered. All right, so for today, we're going to hear 2 brief presentations, one focused on the people of our state and the other on the employers, to help give greater grounding for what our state looks like in terms of the labor market. We'll provide opportunities to hear from our employer representatives about their greatest challenges and what they need most as they think about the future of industry in our state. And again, we'll review the recommended goals and leave time for your continued thoughts on those additional goals. So we're going to kick off with the first presentation from our state demographer, Dr. Michael Klein. We're going to ask that you hold your questions until the end of both the presentations that we're going to have, because they may answer your questions before the presentation's over. So I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Klein to get started with his presentation. Dr. Klein.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Fox. A few moments, and I'll try to make this transition as quick as I can. Like every system is different. So.
Dr. Klein, I'll say we were having a little bit of a hard time hearing you. You can get closer to your microphone. Thank you.
Okay. Uh, Apologize.
As Dr. Klein attempts to pull up that presentation, I'll give some unsolicited commentary on the joy of working with Zoom, WebEx, Teams, Google Meets. You'd think we could put a man on the moon, we could settle on one format that we could all use, in one united system. But there you go. I've tapped long enough, Dr. Klein. There you go. You're off.
See my slides now?
We do see your slides, sir.
I apologize. That's just, it seems like all of the transition. Everybody can hear me now as well. I want to thank you for inviting me to your second meeting of the Governor's Council. What we do in government should be driven by whom we serve, people of North Carolina, but unfortunately, I don't always pay attention to how our population is changing. Thus, do not always match your services to people currently here or will soon be here. And I think it's a credit to you that you've asked me and Josh to speak about our changing state. Of course, I could speak for hours about different demographic change in North Carolina, but I know you don't have that time, so I'll only be able to hit some of the highlights. But do not hesitate to reach out to me either today or some other time. Should you have any additional questions, I'll do my best to answer. And I will share my slides with council, and within those slide deck, there's a few additional slides that kind of expand upon what I'm presenting today. Just a quick overview of what I do for the state. I work in the Office of State Budget Management, and I produce the official or certified population estimates for all municipalities and counties. Someone mentioned the tier system. Part of the tier system uses my population numbers for counties. And if anybody knows about the Powell Bill funds, it's just based on a per capita basis. Also, the population projections for the counties and for the state, and currently our latest projections go out to 2060. Those are used for transportation planning, education planning, and actually other folks, businesses, local communities use those for their own planning.
Doctor, there you go. I was going to say your slides aren't moving, but now they are.
Yeah. North Carolina is the 9th largest state in the country. Last decade, only 5 other states added more people than North Carolina. So far this decade, we have had only 2 states, Texas and Florida, added more population than North Carolina. And if these trends continue, we're on track to add an additional congressional seat after 2030. And also, we're on track to become the 7th largest state in the country, surpassing population of Georgia and Ohio sometime. Now, although we had the 6th largest gain among states in the country last decade, we actually added about 500,000 people less than we did in the 2000s and 10s. And percentage-wise, we had the slowest growth that we've experienced since the 1860s. Nationally, it was the slowest growth we've experienced since the 1930s. Now, much of that slowdown occurred at the beginning of last decade after the Great Recession, with growth picking up about mid-decade and paused by the COVID pandemic, picking up those trends afterwards. If these trends continue, we expect to add about 1.3 million people over the course of this decade, to be a little less than 12 million by 2030. If these trends continue, by 60, we'll have about 15 million North Carolinians. Now I want you to take a look at gray bars. It's kind of at the top of those charts, those bars. For 2010, 2020, see that number about the same, 2.3 million. Now, in reality, there was some growth in the childhood population. That's what that gray bar represented. But we actually added a little less than 3,000 children. So it was 2020, there was just 3,000 more children than what we had in 2010. We look to the future, we see some growth in that childhood population, but it's still relatively slow. This is due to declining fertility, but also the aging of our population. That's implications for our population growth. For most of North Carolina's histories, our growth came from natural increase because we were a net exporter of people. Beginning in the 1970s, that began to change, where we had more people moving into the state than leaving. By the 1980s, the majority of our growth was due to net migration. Over the last 3 decades, from the 1990s to the 2010s, about 2/3 of our growth was due to net migration. But as fertility rates continue to decline and the baby boom is aging, net migration has become a more important part of population growth. In fact, since 2020, about 95% of our all growth has been due to net migration. By the 2030s, actually the end of next decade, all of our growth will be due to net migration. And looking forward into the 2040s, 2050s, all of the growth will be due to net migration. See that natural decrease in those green bars. Now, this is again a factor of declining fertility, but also the aging of the population. The baby boom generation first turned 65 years of age in 2011. And since that time, about 120,000 North Carolinians have turned 65 years of age every year. By the end of this decade, which is hard to believe, we're almost there, 1 in 5 North Carolinians will be an older adult. By the early part of the next decade, there will be more older adults than there are children. As I mentioned earlier, the childhood population is barely growing. So how do we close those gaps in the workforce? Well, if we talk about the net migration, that's where a lot of that growth is occurring, in the net migration, people from other states moving to North Carolina and other countries. Now, most people actually move for job opportunities or for school, for military service. They usually move in early adulthood or children from parents. Over half of those moving from another state, 2023, of course, by the previous year, about 57% were in the ages of 18 to 44. About the same percentage, about 55% of migrants abroad in those same ages. Now, among state-to-state migrants, there also is kind of a blip in the pre-retirement or early retirement ages. And for the people moving from abroad, so a larger percentage of children, 21% before 5 to 17. Now, keep in mind, this doesn't tell you anything about the migrants, because some of those people moving from abroad can be military folks, for example, from Germany or some other place to Fort Bragg, Virginia. And similarly, some of those moving from another state could be a foreign-born person that moves to Atlanta, DC, or New Jersey, and 2 or 3 years later decides to move. Also, if you look at those numbers at the top, 10.3 million people did not move or were still residents of the state last year. And 343,000 moved from another state, 64,000 moved from abroad. So roughly about 4% of our population. Now, in addition to our growth in the state overall, we're becoming a much more urban state. Now, we consider ourselves very rural. We see significant growth in areas. Charlotte is the fourth fastest growing large city in the country. It's been that way, or it was for the last decade, and actually I checked for the latest numbers, it's still in that fourth spot. Some of those above it have kind of shifted, but still Charlotte's at 4. So far this decade, Raleigh is number 7. Of course, those are the largest cities and magnets for population growth, but they're not the only magnets for population growth. You see continued growth in that Piedmont Urban Crescent, Charlotte, Triangle, and counties surrounding those major urban centers, but also Asheville, Wilmington, spillover growth in Norfolk, Virginia. Last decade, Mecklenburg and Wake County accounted for almost half, 47% of all growth. But this decade, we've actually seen greater distribution of our population growth, with about 28%, only 28% occurring in Wake and Mecklenburg counties. Union, Johnston, and Brunswick County adding another 17% of that growth. And 74 counties overall experience some level of population growth. Also,
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
I hate to interrupt, but we've got to sort of try to stay on time. And
Okay.
so if it's okay, we got 1 minute left. Is that okay?
Sure. Let me get
Thank you.
Two more things. So obviously this is a lot of numbers here, so I won't go over these numbers, but I wanted to include these so you can look at them. Roughly, I've divided the state, eastern, western, and central North Carolina, eastern 95 east, western 77 west, and central in between. This shows different age groups that are important for workforce development and different rates of growth for those. In addition to the aging of the population, we're becoming a much more racially diverse population. And if you want to see the future of North Carolina, take local schools. Currently, there's no majority racial and ethnic group. And if you look at the Hispanic population, it's almost the same size as the non-Hispanic Black population. We also stat diversity in the different ages. Much less diverse at the older ages, much more diverse. Thank you.
All right, Michael, thank you for that. A lot of information packed in there. We appreciate you walking us through that. I'm going to turn it over now to Josh Levy, and I'll remind everybody at the end of Josh's presentation, I'm going to open it up for comments, but particularly we want to hear from our employers and what your thoughts or reflections are on these two presentations. And then also just what are you seeing as your greatest needs and concerns regarding the workforce. So I want to let you think about that for a minute while Josh pulls up his presentation and gets started here. So Josh, kick it over to you.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So appreciate the invitation to present to you all. My name is Josh Levy. I'm a policy analyst at the Department of Commerce in our Labor and Economic Analysis Division. We were asked to provide some context in terms of how many jobs and businesses we have in the state, as well as some findings from our employer needs survey. So I'm going to quickly run through a few pieces from that. One of the best sources we have for business and employment in the state is called the Quarterly Census of Employment and Wages. This is something that is based on unemployment insurance records. It's a great source of data for industry, establishments, and wages, all kinds of information in there at different geographies. And we distinguish between firms, which are businesses or companies, and establishments, which are the physical locations where people are working. So this is going to really focus on the physical locations. So in 2023, the last full year we have in there, over 350,000 establishments in this source. We're going to, I'm going to run quickly. If you look at the employment column, this is sorted by largest employment. So our industries such as healthcare, retail, manufacturing, accommodation and food, education are really the biggest ones. There's not a real clear relationship between the number of establishments and the employment levels, but you can see those in the third and fourth columns there. I'm going to skip ahead just to show you that about 78% of the establishments have fewer than 10 employees. So lots of small establishments, and then, decreasing numbers as they get bigger. Very few establishments that have, over 500 employees, for example. If you want to know the breakout by industry, this table shows that, and I've sorted it by the industry with the most small establishments, so professional, scientific, and technical services, lots of companies fewer than 10, construction, retail, other services, and healthcare. So those are some of the kind of ranges by industry to give you a sense of what's out there. I want to tell you a little bit. So we use that data source as the field that we draw our samples from for this survey. This is a survey that we've done many times. You can see the full report online. We also have an interactive dashboard so you can kind of compare the different industry samples that we have here. We've done this every 2 years since 2014. So 10 years we've been doing this survey on behalf of the NC Works Commission. It's implemented it's a phone survey that folks at NC State do for us. And we have 5 samples. So an all employer sample, just an overall sample that looks like the industrial makeup of the state. And then we have special samples in manufacturing and healthcare, construction, and some STEM industries. And we also did a supplementary survey with some additional questions. So quickly, our key findings from the 2024 survey, we saw a decrease in hiring difficulties, and I'll show you a chart of that quickly. Getting back to where we were pre-pandemic. We're going to talk about employability as a set of issues that a lot of employers are pointing to as contributing to some of their hiring difficulties. We're also going to look at some barriers to employment. And as this group is focused on some opportunities to grow work-based learning, which I think are key. And we also ask about business optimism. Again, just to give you a sense, this is every survey we've done since 2014. We ask employers about the year prior to the survey. Did they have any difficulty filling at least one position? So it's a very low bar. You can see that early on it was, in the 40s, kind of creeping up over the 2017, 2019 timeframe, and then really jumped in 2021 to 81% of employers. Most recently, that's come down a bit to 62%. So hopefully getting closer to where we were in 2019. You can also see this gray line, which shows the job seekers per job opening. So this gives you a sense of how many people were out there looking for jobs relative to the number of job openings. And you can see that as that decreased, the difficulty started to go up. We had a little blip here with the pandemic recession. We saw the 81% jump. And for the last couple of years, it's actually been pretty stable at about 1.2, 1.3 job seekers per opening as the labor market has sort of slowed down. We have a lot of reasons that employers will give for these difficulties. Some of the top ones are employability things like work ethic, punctuality, dependability, just basic, can you show up and do, to do a job? And a low number of applicants is also very high. Other issues important for fewer numbers of employers. That's for entry-level positions. Slightly different mix for the positions that require more than 1 year of experience, but some of the same issues are there as well. Again, a word cloud that we asked employers to do, really stressing the importance of things like work ethic. Not a surprise. We talk about barriers to applying and working, so transportation and childcare are key. We hear a lot about having criminal records and drug screening, not as prevalent, but still obviously important for a lot of industries. for both entry level and experienced. These are some barriers. We talked about recruitment. I'm going to skip over this for a second. Just wanted to show this because we do ask about the kinds of training they offer, and you can see, excuse me, you can see the apprenticeship programs here. Lower percentage, but that's something that we would be interested in growing. We further asked about any kind of work-based learning that they did. We found that overall about 37% of employers did any of these things. The most common are things like job shadowing and internships. You can see about 12% have some kind of apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship. Fewer do activities with K through 12 schools. A workforce response to workforce challenge. So about 17% use an intern or an apprentice to try to deal with some of those challenges. That's another area that we could potentially look to grow. And then we've asked about, attempts to recruit from particular populations. Everyone says, they're going to go after younger workers, and more than half choose veterans, but fewer are looking to individuals with disabilities, criminal records, or even remote workers. So some potentially untapped pools of labor there. We asked about diversity. This is extremely important to employers. The average was 8.5 out of 10. And half of them said it was extremely important, and only 5% said diversity was less than a 5. So employers are looking for diversity, and apprenticeship and work-based learning may be a way to address some of those issues. Again, I will just leave you with what we kind of had as our key findings. I mentioned the underutilized talent pools, some issues around employability to address, as well as those barriers to employment. Employer-driven talent development initiatives, so developing their own talent pipelines, whether it's through work-based learning and other efforts. We've talked about automation as a challenge for employers as well, and industry-specific partnerships, another place where we could look to grow. So I know we've been running a little behind, and I'm happy to stop there and pause for questions for myself or for Michael.
Yep. So I'll turn again back to our employers first. Josh, thank you for that. And just ask if there's any reflections from any of our employers on the presentation. Did any of that resonate with you all? I'm sure much of that did, but any comments from our employers?
This is Eric Schultz with Daimler Truck North America. Very good information. Appreciate all the data and info. And yes, it definitely resonated. The employability factor is very significant. On our non-skilled trades employees, it's been one of the biggest challenges is getting people who can come in and are reliable and dependable. And I would just add a significant caveat to that, in that it's significantly higher on second and third shifts. So as a manufacturing company, we work multiple shifts quite often in our different facilities. And what we found is the lack of willingness and availability to work on those off shifts has gotten harder than ever. And we've significantly increased our pay and our pay on the shift premiums for those. And we're still struggling to get consistent, reliable individuals for that. And two factors that contributed that you hit on are the transportation issue and the childcare issue. And so I don't know if others have experienced similar things. I assume so, but those are definitely challenges that we've been faced with in our locations in the state. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Other employers want to weigh in?
Yeah, I'll comment. Agree with Eric. Childcare is definitely an issue that we continue to run into for certain people. And I will say that there is regarding employability, we see, just the ability to stay off the cell phone, the ability to follow particular rules, showing up on time. Sometimes that is transportation related, but a lot of time it's just we have to maintain a certain work ethic, and we've got to set a bar somewhere. And sometimes, unfortunately, some folks really struggle with that. And sometimes it is for personal reasons that are beyond their control. A lot of times it's a choice that gets made, and there's only so much we can do as an employer to try to offer solutions to that. But at some point, we have to set a standard, and it is a struggle. I do have just a general question for the group in terms of the governor's goals. Are we the pool of people that we are trying to pull from in order to try to increase the number of people participating in work-based learning activities and these programs? Are we targeting both college pathway and non-college pathway, or purely non-college pathway students?
I think I can answer that one for you, Mark. I think this is an all the above strategy. So we want people to find their pathway to their best job in any way that it comes.
From my perspective in healthcare, I'll say everything they said is true for us as well in the survey related to the challenges of employability. I will say the greatest challenge I face, at least, is the two presentations together about the population growth numbers, particularly the aging of the population. You could put that on steroids if you broke it out by region and put it into rural communities. A higher age group without out migration. At the same time, the younger age group is out migrating to urban environments. And so when you consider the work we do, it means that younger employability is a challenge. And in tier 1 communities, you have preparation differences, socioeconomic issues. And so retention and training is high cost and with low retention often. My overall employee retention is great. My young and lower wage earner groups, which tend to be from the tier 1 communities, employability and retention is very low, can be as high as 30 to 40% turnover rates within the first year or two. And so that just adds to a cost burden at the same time that this shortage of workforce in healthcare is driving up the cost of healthcare and the cost of doing business, while we see this big growing pool of people who are going to consume the most of the healthcare resources.
That's really interesting observation there, Brian. I think I'm looking forward to digging into that with you to think through, particularly that younger demographic and those entry level jobs. How do we partner together to build both an educational pipeline to create greater opportunity and also make those employees stickier with you? So, the CNA stays to become a nurse, who stays to become a nurse practitioner. So you got a whole, a pathway for people to stay employed, but also increase their economic mobility. So there's definitely work I think we can dig into there to figure out how to work better together. Other employer comments? All right. Well, we'll feel free if something strikes you in a little bit, something comes to you, put it in the chat. We will capture it and circle back on that. But for now, I want to thank you again for participating. I'm going to turn it over to Secretary Lilly to take us from here for the second half of our meeting.
Thank you, President Cox. Just a quick mic check. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Very good. Thank you. I will also bemoan that sometimes we switch over to a different platform and the mic isn't the right mic. But anyway, we're there. Big thank you to Dr. Klein and to Josh for their presentations and giving perspective on our population and workforce. I think many things that ring true for a lot of us and inform this next section, which is a continuation of what we spent the bulk of our time on last week and is ultimately leading to our goal to prepare and send goals to the governor for his review by June. A lot of work to go there. I think we've had a good chance, the three chairs, to touch base with almost everybody on the council and get some one-on-one time with you to feedback and inform some of what we are going to talk about here, which is to go through that list of existing goals that we reviewed in the last meeting, discuss where those need to be enhanced or lifted up higher, and then also discuss some new goals, creation of new goals that we have included with big nod to the staff team here reflective of the conversation we had last week or last month, and also where our one-on-ones have taken us. So we're going to go about 7-8 minutes per goal slide as we go through this so that we can stay on track. We're right on time at the moment, and I'll try to keep the conversation moving. If I don't, Dr. Izod will. So thank you, Annie, for doing that. We want the goal to be well-defined. We want to have clear metrics and have an idea that we're going to get feedback from staff and the other members of the team on this as we go along. We have about 13 draft goals to review, and that's a big number. So beyond suggestions to the goal, we will welcome suggestions to cutting goals or perhaps consolidating that number of goals so that it's really the right number for us to find as meaningful, measurable, and movable goals. So let's go to the first one where we probably already have the most meat on the bone, and that's credential and degree attainment goals, which we've got up there on the slides. Big thanks and nod to our leaders at My Future NC for the credential and attainment goals that have driven a great deal of the work we've already been doing. So we don't have to spend a ton of time on these existing goals. They're really just a reference point. Everybody seemed to be in agreement to amplify the statewide attainment goal and to also create a new attainment goal focused on high school students. So if we could see the next slide, just so we can see that new goal that we discussed on high school students. All right, there we go. Amplify the existing goal on 2 million, the My Future NC goal, but we talked a great deal about high school students and increasing post-secondary enrollment, whether it's into employment with a sustaining wage or enlistment in the military. We want to put some numbers on that. So let me pause at that moment. And the first person I want to turn it over to is Cecilia, just for any initial response on that. And then I see we have something in the chat from Senator Applewhite, and we can start this discussion.
Sure, thank you. I would just say to the other slide, thank you for lifting up the state's educational attainment goal. Data is probably one of the hardest things that we do. And so wherever we can align on the data, I think that would be super important because we're already tracking the things that would lift up My Future. So that would be easy in terms of measurable goals. In terms of this, I think that having a goal around graduating high school students is certainly something that would align with our work as well. While we are about 2 million by 2030, we always like to add and beyond because that's the future of the workforce pipeline as well. So we're delighted to see a graduation goal for high school students added to this.
Thank you, Cecilia, for that. Senator Applewhite, I want to get to your question, but before I do, let me see what the reaction is on these amplification and new goal concepts. Don't be shy.
Hey, this is Trey. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hey, this is Trey at DPI. Of course, I'm excited about these because that's our business. But we think that we can add some really positive information here and help contribute with a meaningful way.
Let me ask Dr. Izod or Kendall if you have any additional color you want to add from sort of staff perspective and consideration of these.
Let me find the unmute button that is in a different spot on the WebEx. So Trey, can you help me to figure out the best way to answer you? I mean, I thought while you were talking, I was trying to look at a chat question. So can you restate it?
So it wasn't so much a question as much as it was just we're excited about the goal. I think that that this is right up our alley, particularly in CTE, and we're already doing, of course, the credentials. So looking at our post-secondary enrollment and how we want to drive children from our K-12 space into our 13-14 space, and of course into IHEs. that's a wonderful thing. And if you're not aware, my team just kind of we didn't take over JROTC, but we did add JROTC to our inventory in CTE and as a pathway. So we hit 2 of those pretty directly.
Okay. Well, I will say we applaud all the efforts that you guys do, and we want to make sure, I think here in this meeting, what we're trying to accomplish is capitalize on the work that you do to work with this audience and making sure that we're building those bridges to the next steps. And also lifting up the work that's being done in certain area high schools for CTE and making sure it's replicated in other high schools. I do think not all high schools have all the same opportunities. So hopefully that's helpful in, in sort of adding flavor to this.
Yeah, definitely. And I also apologize for my video. It appears to keep going in and out, and my speaker and microphone may be doing the same. My computer does not like WebEx, so I apologize.
So I've got a question here about this one. So if this goal is around credential and degree attainment, I wonder about in terms of the new goal, the second part of that, moving into employment with family sustaining wage. That doesn't really speak. It indirectly speaks to a credential or degree attainment, but I wonder if it ought to more explicitly say earning credentials that lead to family sustaining pathways or something. So in other words, you could have a family sustaining wage with a family business and not have any kind of degree or credential, possibly, though that's not that frequent. But I don't know if the goal here is around degree and credential attainment. I would just wonder, and are you going to measure those as 3 separate things? What's the percentage of post-secondary enrollment? What's the percentage of credentials earned that are aligned with family sustaining wage careers? And what's the percentage of military? Or are you going to blend all those into one statistic? I guess that my bias would be showing those broken out separately, so that you don't get lost in, if you got a lot more in one area or the other, that might get blended or might get lost if you just blend and report out on one number for those 3. That's just my thoughts, but what do the rest of you think?
Specifically, what is a family sustaining wage?
Glad you asked that. Annie, can you give us the research on what a family sustaining wage is based on the data we have? I think it's about $17 an hour.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think we have as we get into like labor market alignment and we talk a little bit more about wages specifically, we actually have some information coming up later in the meeting where we're going to get into that. And so, but right now, and I think Josh Levy is here too. I don't want to speak for I know what the lead folks, so want to make sure that folks know. And also Cecilia shared on the dashboard some of the research that My Future NC has done for family sustaining wages. And so if you look on that, you can look at that website as well for more information, Mark, and I think that might be helpful.
So Annie, I can provide some background info. So normally family sustaining wage is for $16.83 per hour for one working adult. If you have if you have 4 kids, four children, that will be $42.45, and that's based on the MIT family living wage calculation. And My Future NC, the dashboard also actually combine the calculation with MIT and census. I think it's 300% of the federal poverty line.
Thanks, Mayway. Thank you, Mayway. That's a good note. Good question, Mark. But obviously, we'll have some variation on that based upon an area and an area's median income and costs. But this is our best effort to drill down on that statistic. We do need to keep this moving. I want to have Andrea, you note portability of credentials and licensure for military spouses is another potential pathway here. Briefly, if you could share with us, so the biggest bang for buck, places where you know military spouses have had a hard time having that portability if they've moved from another state, if there's a particular license or credential where we would need some assistance either through statutory action or the work of a licensure board on having greater flexibility.
Of course, military spouses have anywhere between 20 to 27% unemployment. A lot of times there's discrimination because an employer looks and says, oh, military spouse are going to be gone in 2 years. I don't even want to look. So that's certainly a barrier. But as far as credentialing, increasing that number is, you know, a lot of spouses will come here that are teachers or nurses or in the healthcare industry, cosmetologists, and they have a hard time sometimes being able to get in. I think there might be a struggle with the nurse licensure. I know that there's a program, I believe in DPI, where a teacher from another state can come here that's credentialed and say, hey, I'm a military spouse. And they would get like a preferential quick decision to move them. But there's not a question on the application of, are you connected to the military? So that never really happens to them. So I think we need to look at that, and so I think they're having issues with teachers and in the healthcare industry.
Teachers and healthcare on licensure.
Yes.
Briefly, I want to respond to Senator Applewhite and Brian, who wanted to follow up on the child care piece. We do have a whole separate child care council that I think our work will ultimately try to braid together, particularly when we get to the strategy part of our exercise. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on child care, but obviously it is a major barrier that we all know is out there. And what the Child Care Council is doing is exactly that, looking at many of the different types of solutions, those that are, I think, probably most gold-plated, like what ECU Health is able to offer with on-site childcare, as well as assistance on childcare costs. There are a lot of different variations of that. Not every employer has the wherewithal to do all of that, but I think employers, in concert with public resources, can work on some solutions that might fit their workforce and their capabilities. And that's what we'll get from that other council. We'll probably have a chance to talk with them when we get into the strategy side of the discussion. We will, I think, put a pin in the question here that the chair raised, President Cox, because I think we probably have some discussion to be had further on that, but I do want us to keep on time. So President Cox, I think for right now, we'll leave it at I think the preference probably is to break it out, but we'll see what it looks like when we do that. If we could move to the next topic area, which is pre and registered apprenticeships, we want to go through the goals here. Okay, so we actually have several, and you can see them there, a couple from Apprenticeship NC, with dates already on them, both as a percentage or ratio, and then as a net number, with some big increases. The governor has been very clear about his goal to double the number of apprenticeships within 4 years, so by 2029, aligned with what we see in these above. Next slide, please. So the amplification of an existing goal, double the number of active registered apprenticeships. I think we all know that that's the one that the governor has given to us as a council, and I think fits very neatly here, and we'll be able to lift that one up. Before I move on, any conversation about that goal, as well as anything that we may have missed on pre and registered apprenticeships specifically?
Secretary Lilly, this is Andrea. Are we also counting skill bridge programs as apprenticeships?
That's a good question. I'll just pipe in real quick. And I think this is important for us to talk about. And I know Chris Harrington's got his hand raised, but quickly, these are really talking about those that are registered apprenticeships and the pre-apprenticeships that are connected to those registered apprenticeships. So the ones that are outside of that may not be counted in this number. And we can talk about in our strategies how we want to include those moments as well. But I guess we can, Chris Harrington raised his hand, but trying to think of how to include him in this discussion. So give me a second. All right, Andrea, do you want to pipe in?
I was just going to say, I mean, it's interesting, DOL uses Hiring Our Heroes, and, they've got, and American Corporate Partners also have programs that are like internships. I don't know if we want to, apprenticeship / internship, but those you interview for these internships as you're getting ready to leave the military, and then you train with them for 3 or 4 months, and then you go right on into jobs. So I don't know if we want to look at that separately, or if that's
actually, yeah, thanks for bringing it up. So Chris mentioned in the chat that Fort Bragg does include apprenticeships with theirs. So and Chris, I think you're able to unmute, but I'm not sure.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So yeah, so from a apprenticeship NC, we're talking about our registered apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships. Frankly, we don't have a good way to track anything that would be outside of it. And the problem with those that are not registered is we have no way of really knowing what's the rigor behind it, right? So that's, we're certainly biased towards registered apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships. And, my view is it's somewhat linked to that last goal. We'd certainly like to see more connected to high school. So potentially transitioning more of an internship to pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship, but that's more in strategy.
So I think the slide clickers are letting me know it's time to move to the next one, Chris. And I actually think this may address some of the questions that have been raised here, which is putting together our goals around work-based learning. So those opportunities that exist strictly outside of pre and registered apprenticeship. There we go. You guys can see the goals, same that we discussed last week. Good goals. I think somewhere we will want to drill down on some real measurability here, metrics, baselining, et cetera. Let's go to the next slide, if we could, on creating a new goal: increase work-based learning experiences for learners and job seekers at all levels, where we want to propose, again, the metrics here that would be measurable in this case. Anna Perkinson, just because you've been active here in the chat a couple times, is this sort of the right place, you think, for what you're talking about?
I think so. I mean, we might want to, I don't know if we would do it in the goal or kind of further define it in the strategies, the specific types of work-based learning experiences we're talking about. Just because I think if we're not specific for the types of work-based learning experiences we're talking about or thinking of, it's going to be really hard to track them and keep any sort of data on them. But yes, I think overall this to me gets at kind of the concerns that were being raised with the goal specific to apprenticeships, because it is looking at it's encompassing all of the other types of work-based learning. But I do think we're going to need to define somewhere the types of work-based learning we're talking about.
Thanks, Anna. I apologize if team can monitor the hand raising. I'm looking at the chat and not at the list of folks who are participating. So somebody can, if I'm missing somebody with their hand up, let me know. Otherwise, unmute yourself and dive in.
Secretary Lilly, looks like Cecilia has her hand raised.
Go ahead.
Thanks. I'm a huge fan of the work-based learning opportunities for our high school students in particular. I would look to our friends at Department of Public Instruction to make sure that we could count it. And so, Trey, you may be able to chime in on what's currently being counted for all students, not just CTE students, or what perhaps is not being counted. And in terms of defining what that work-based learning opportunity looks like, I think if you look at the data, we had a national presenter speak to our board, and the percentage of students today in high school that are taking advantage of work-based learning as compared to in years past is significantly declining. And so I think that the more that we can get them exposed to any type of work-based experience, the better off we are. But to your point, I think, if it could be a quality work-based learning experience, that would even be better. And then, of course, how we track that so that we would know whether or not we've got a measurable goal would be important. But just knowing that there's a focus on it, I think, is super critical for our high school students. And at least for my son, when he was going through, he was able to get high school credit. And so I don't know if that might be a way to make sure that we can measure it.
I think that's a great point, Cecilia. And I'll just add that with our community college courses beyond apprenticeship, which is obviously the kind of the gold star of these because with the rigor and so forth. But even in some individual courses, we do have work-based learning that's embedded. And based on some of the statistics that we've been learning lately about how few young people actually have any work experience. It's not like when we were growing up, almost all of us had jobs, whether it's mowing yards or babysitting or working somewhere else. A lot of young people don't have those work experiences. So this embedding work-based learning in some capacity and or apprenticeship, a full registered apprenticeship, I think is critical when you hear business and industry saying they want people with work experience. Even if they have the degree, they still need to have some experience. So I think it's a really important point to dig into. And the devil is in the details, how you define it, what counts, what doesn't count. So that's work ahead of us.
Dr. Cox, this is Travis Reeves with Surrey County Schools. I would agree wholeheartedly. As we think about a 16 or 17-year-old that may want to go into an apprenticeship or pre-apprenticeship, the work-based learning is kind of our minor leagues to get that student ready for that work environment, for the expectations. We want them to be successful. I see this potentially as a place where we can combine pre-apprenticeship, apprenticeship, and work-based learning into one goal versus having two separate goals. And I personally think this is the most important work of our committee and where we need to be spending the most time to truly move the needle across the state. And as I reflect on the presentation from the demographers, and I think about rural North Carolina, if I'm not working really hard to keep and open up these opportunities for my students at home, they're going to be leaving our county. And so this work is extremely important for us to get students ready for a pre-apprenticeship or apprenticeship. And for some students, that's not where they want to go. And we may not have a business that's necessarily in their wheelhouse, but we've given them a job, experience, something to put on a resume, and a business contact or a local person that can potentially connect them to someone else, which is going to relate to a relevant job somewhere. It might not be in that first area. It might be in the second or third.
Thank you for that. Can I call on you, Caroline Sullivan? You've added some helpful links in the chat, but give us some of the feedback you've got from NCBCE on some definitions here around work-based learning.
Yeah, the definitions, so starting in 2017 and then again in 2019 in North Carolina wrote a proposal that was accepted to the National Governors Association to focus on work-based learning. So the first one, it was a statewide definition, and I put the partners in. It was a multi-system partnership. We had representatives from DPI and the community college system and NC Works and DWS and the governor's office. And we were there to really dig into what do we all agree on work-based learning. And then we had these buckets. It aligns pretty much exactly with what DPI has come out with on work-based learning, except for like that middle level. I think they call it exposure and we called it exploration, but it's still, it is sort of all work-based learning is important, all of it, but it's in a spectrum, right? And as Dr. Reeves was saying, sometimes to get to that higher level of work-based learning, you need to be able to do the lower level as well. So I think we can take some of that work and adjust it if that would make things easier.
Thanks, Caroline. Cecilia, I know you've got a hand up.
I do. I didn't intend to if I do.
Okay, no problem.
Sorry about that.
Steve Mange, are you on still?
Yes, I am here. Yes.
Yeah, let me just see if I could volunteer you here. Anything we need to include in this that's reflective of the reentry population and work-based learning for that cohort?
Yes, definitely. A lot of I think most folks maybe at least have some familiarity with Reentry 2030, the all of government plan that came out of an executive order from Governor Cooper last year. And there's actually quite a few specific goals in Reentry 2030 that dovetail very nicely with the discussions we've been having around apprenticeships and work-based learning that could be integrated as goals or commentary. In one thing that I think is particularly interesting in the corrections setting is things like our work release program, where we actually have currently incarcerated individuals who are in minimum custody, who are able to actually go out and do work for employers in the community. And that has the potential to lead to employment for those folks upon release, or the development of very specific work-related skills, both specific skills, but also all of those kind of soft skills that everyone has been commenting on being so important from an employer's point of view. And so, yes, I think there's many, many connections between the reentry work that we do and the sort of way that we've been structuring the goals through the council. So, and I welcome others. I know certainly Andrea DeSantis and others at Commerce have been involved in this work quite a bit longer than I have. So certainly welcome others to chime in on this as well.
Thank you, Steve. I want to wrap up this one, even though it's probably our most important, but I think, JB, you've probably summed it up nicely for us. It's a good goal, but we've got to drill down on definitions, baselining, and coming up with an achievable metric here, so as not to have 1,000 flowers bloom or boil the ocean or whatever is the appropriate metaphor here. But I think at the end of the day, we've got some very clear goals on credential attainment and pre and registered apprenticeships. Let's get them clearer on work-based learning, as it's going to represent a large cohort here and a big opportunity. Labor market alignment is our next topic area as defined by the executive order. And you see there, thanks again to our friends at My Future NC, as well as the system and this UNC system and community college system, for some existing goals as defined. Let's go to the next slide so we can talk about amplification. All right. Folks can read that, but increase alignment rate between the skills of college graduates and the needs of North Carolina employers to 85%. One more time, go back a slide, see that goal again. That's that top goal from My Future NC, where we're at 81% 2023 baseline data. And then new goal, increase alignment between career technical education, CTE, sometimes our efforts to avoid jargon run into common terminology, but for all folks here, career technical education offerings and the needs of North Carolina employers. Let's have some conversation about that one and where we want to look at sort of baselining that number.
May I
Secretary
ask
Lilly.
a point of clarification first?
Go ahead, Trey.
The CTE, are we talking secondary and post-secondary?
I believe so, but staff correct me.
Yes, yes, you're correct. Both secondary and post-secondary. Great question, Trey.
Okay, that's great. And so that everyone knows, our Perkins legislation does require a comprehensive local needs assessment be conducted every 2 years. And that should be meetings between community colleges and employers, secondary schools and employers. And that has been productive, and it has put us in better alignment. But I think people seeing actual numbers and recognizing that it's okay to make hard choices, sometimes with personnel, is a valid thing to do to meet our needs.
Thanks, Trey. Cecilia, you were going to say something?
Trey actually asked the question that I was thinking, but I also defer to co-chair Jeff Cox on this one, where it says increase alignment rate between the skills of college graduates and the needs of North Carolina employers. I'm wondering if, where it says college graduates, if we should expand that, because the people that go through Con Ed, would you consider them in terms of college graduate? Does that need to be a little bit broader?
That's a great point. Someone else, I think JB Buxton, had mentioned in the earlier goal, maybe we blend this credential broadly. So college graduate here might, if you've got someone who has earned a credential of value that puts them in a living wage job in the labor market, that's alignment with the labor market, right? In fact, insisting that it be a degree and not a credential might be misalignment with the labor market. So for me, it would make sense to broaden that out and be more inclusive with any kind of degree or credential that aligns with what the labor market demand is.
And I would just look to my friends at Labor Economic Analysis Division in regards to the ability to measure that. Mayway, if you had any comments about whether or not that language could be expanded and still be measurable.
We can talk. We can discuss. Yes.
Thank you.
On these labor market alignment questions, I would invite any feedback from our representatives from the business and labor communities on these. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about alignment between skill attainment and ultimately skills that are going to be valued by your businesses or within your unions. Any feedback on these goals or broadly on goals in labor market alignment?
So I'll speak on the plumbing and HVAC trades. Had a meeting recently with McDowell County Community College and asked about them in a plumbing program. Essentially, the answer was they've got a very small offering because they have so few interested in that career path. So I'm not sure how to align the number of people seeking employment in the available jobs versus all of the education in the world that we're willing to offer, but nobody's taking us up on the offer.
Great point. Thank you, Mark.
I would just share a perspective, at least, that the workforce shortages that health systems have radically changed what was a high mark bar for entry into health systems, both in age, credentialing and all those things, to partnering with colleges and high schools to ready people for entry, and then we'll train them into these jobs. And a decade ago, health systems wouldn't make much of that gamble. Now we are willing to do that to help sponsor people, but I don't know how much alignment there is between goals like this and that push. I certainly agree if it's a college graduate, that already segments them away, but I'm not sure I understand the CTE, what that means exactly as it relates to how do we deal with non-degreed individuals whom we want to employ into apprenticeship opportunities. I might put them into EVS services or things like that, with the full intent to get them to a nursing degree over the next, 5, 6 years. But I don't know what that needs to look like or how we might word that kind of thing. Another great example is military, people who leave service in the military as medics have no degree to offer in the healthcare sector today. So we're trying to figure out, do we create new degree programs that bridge them in a very short path to become like a nurse, because the skill sets are so similar.
There are a couple states that actually have a program exactly like that take medics and transfer them right over into creating that pathway. So I think that's simply, we need to look at those from other states, but there are a couple states that have a program like that.
Okay, I want to wrap this one up, but any other feedback on, we've got some, I think, some added color on the existing goal, as well as the new goal. Any other feedback on those?
Hi, I'm sorry I can't show my screen, but this is Tammy Simmons. I would just say I totally agree with Cecilia and Chairman Cox on broadening the labor market alignment goal. One thing that just keeps kind of reverberating in my mind, and maybe we're going to just hit this in the strategy session of these goals, is a lot of what we're setting these goals for, the employers are going to have to pull the lever to make them actually get met. And even in my thoughts around, with like the community colleges, working with the employers to see what those skills are that's needed. I've done that for 10, 15 years in our business, but it's very limited. There's not enough of us doing that. So I don't know if we can tap into a subset of employers to kind of run these things by, or if that's just going to be in our strategy. But I just keep thinking we need to get more employers. And I'm grateful for the ones that are speaking up and they're telling, I've not really said a lot because they're just saying the same things that I would be saying. But to execute these the way that we want to and get them met for the 4 years for the governor's agenda, I think we need to maybe pull in some more or else strategize how that's going to happen down the road.
Great point. Thank you. Last word here, JB, you got a note in the chat on Lenore and Durham Tech, trying to do some of this pipelining around.
Just a note on that, and Lenore Community College is doing that right now. This is more about this goal, and maybe for consideration that we think about narrowing this down to some specific key drivers in our labor markets, and rather than a number that's going to try to capture the whole state. I mean, we try to do this in looking at what programs we run, and a lot of my peers do this. And it's not too hard for us to look at demand side data to make sure the programs and credentials are aligned within our labor market. I think doing this across the whole state in multiple systems is tough. And I just wonder if we wanted to name a few sectors that the state is committing to, that we would say our workforce system needs to be in alignment. And that means high schools, community colleges, workforce development boards, et cetera, in those areas, rather than make it a general statement across all jobs. And it may be a little easier for us to both track and operationalize.
Thanks, JB. You have led us into the next slide. We appreciate that. You hit your cue exactly right. All right, sector-based strategies, a little bit of a crossover here from the last one. And we were operating on one existing goal. We may not have captured everything, but this was the main one from NC Works strategic plan that's covering these 2 years around a workforce system that is responsive to the needs of the economy by fostering employer leadership. Grateful for the employer leaders on this council. Your time is really valuable, so thanks for that. But here's a space where we obviously have a lot of room to grow. And to your point, JB, we'll just jump right into number 8 there. Comprehensive statewide sector-based strategies for key industries and occupations. Places where we know we've got growth and need. Education healthcare and ... Could be construction, could be lots of things. But I think based on what we've seen in growth in the labor market, these are places where we know we have needs. I think emerging here in the title does not need to mean it's a tech, quote unquote new industry. Emerging here means it's emerging as a particular pain point around need and employment. But number 8, where we're going to call out, I think, some of those key industries or occupations. Number 7, just to work in reverse, employer engagement in sector-based strategies and work-based learning opportunities with a focus on small businesses and in-demand fields. And then number 9, integrate AI skills development into sector-based strategies and work-based learning in key industries to build a future-ready workforce. This is about both sort of future-proofing the workforce here against some automation that might put their employment at risk, as well as putting our workforce and their employers in a better position to succeed because they're on the leading edge here. So 3 new goals here for sector-based strategies. Open the floor to responses on any of these 3 and anything we may have missed.
Hi, this is Karen Wade at DHS, and I really appreciate from the department's perspective the focus on healthcare. I think we have a lot of good infrastructure here that we can build off of, so I think that really sets us up for a good launching pad there. And I think as the data has shown, this really continues to be an area of great need, especially when we're thinking about not just an aging workforce, but an aging population and the demands that will be there. And I also really like the focus on 7 too. And I'm thinking in terms of this one and some of our previous discussions on work-based learning and apprenticeships, if it would be helpful to kind of focus as we're trying to think of quantifiable aspects around the number of provider entities that are participating in apprenticeships. So it's the number of different, be it hospitals or whatever partner we're thinking about would be the quantifiable piece, so we can ensure that there's enough available opportunities for those that are interested in apprenticeships. But again, just really thank you for the focus on healthcare, and looking forward to leaning into that area more.
Thanks, Karen. Other feedback on sector-based strategies here.
I would just note that the goal around AI, there seems to be at least 2 or 3 different entities in the state that's kind of trying to get our heads around this AI and the impact on the future of work. So I think, DIT maybe has some ideas of having a group working on that. I think I'm trying to remember if it was state treasurer or labor secretary. There's 2 or 3 different groups that we've talked about trying to kind of do an effort. So I think maybe this council can play some role in helping target how do we kind of collectively as a state get our heads around this AI issue and the impact it's going to have on the workforce, and how do we need to be adjusting in the education sector to prepare that future ready workforce. So anyway, I just kind of want to put a pin in that one to say we need to come back and kind of look at who all are the different groups that are trying to attack this issue, and how do we coordinate that effort in some way.
I might just jump in on that because that strategy struck me as well. And to Dr. Cox's point, I wonder if we should build something in there I don't know that we know right now how to integrate AI skills development into sector-based strategies. I wonder if that shouldn't be hedged a little bit to say, explore the integration of AI skills development. I don't think we know what it is yet that we want to do. So I think it's more of an exploration than than a clear affirmative task at this point.
Well, let me call on staff. You may already have some feedback on that, but at minimum, to do some outreach with some of the other parts of government that may be engaging on the AI side. First, any reaction from staff, and then perhaps an initiative after this call.
Thanks, Secretary Lilly. I'll chime in just to say that we didn't want to have this meeting without the opportunity to at least briefly discuss AI, because we know that it's on the top of everybody's mind, whether in local business, training job seekers, or in a state agency. So we'll definitely make sure that we go back, listen to the other initiatives that are going on, and then come back to this committee to say, okay, we think these are potential goals here. We think this is really more of a strategy that needs to be looped in across multiple goals. So definitely we'll dive in after this.
Thanks. I'll just say I would love for something like this to end up in the goals category, just so that it is lifted up adequately. And Steve, I take your suggestion very seriously, but this may show up in a lot of different strategies, but at the end of the day, I think for the governor, we may be it may be important for us to show this as some sort of a measurable, movable goal at some point. So, other responses on sector-based strategies, and Dr. Reeves, you've had a couple comments in the chat. I wonder if you could expand upon those.
As far as sector-based strategies, I would first of all say on the K-12 side, I would need some help understanding what some of those larger areas are. I use my business and industry to help us really develop where we're going. I don't have a research division within our school system. I think what I was saying in the chat, really, if we focus, I like the idea of us, again, I said this in the face-to-face meeting, trying to define the work we're doing, trying to change the culture of what our expectations are across the state. We're sitting here together as one group, united, trying to really do some challenging work while we're in the midst of population change, economic change, you name it, change. And we have the chance to really define the work. And I really think we need to narrow the focus, narrow the goals. That's my opinion. I'm one person. I like the idea of combining the work-based learning and the pre-apprenticeships, apprenticeships. And I know I've got a couple of business partners that have been really successful, both large and small companies, in growing their own. And what I see when we talk to high school kids about a job, they don't know what they want to do. They may be good with their hands, or they may be good using a computer. They may be good solving problems, but that doesn't necessarily relate to a career. It's our job to kind of help them understand what they're good at, and then how do they make money. And so oftentimes our businesses are taking a chance on a student and they grow them. And then I think what our healthcare partners saying, we see businesses kind of growing their own through the business, and then giving our students kind of stair steps of progression within the business. That's where I've seen the most success. Even with our small businesses, they have a pipeline where their employees and our students are able to grow. That would be my suggestion. And I mentioned in the chat possibly bringing in a couple of those businesses just to sit down with this committee and answer questions about how they've done the work they've done and what the culture's like. So that would be my suggestion, Secretary Lilly.
Thank you, Dr. Reeves.
Hi, this is Sherry. Can I add a quick comment?
You bet.
So definitely, I know there are statewide employer needs and sector-based strategies. We talked about healthcare. Likely the others would be advanced manufacturing and technology. But I would also like to suggest that there are going to be regional employer needs too. I think that was alluded to. So maybe we rely on information from our workforce boards or our prosperity zones to lift those up as well. That may just be limited to certain areas that we really need to focus on within the state.
Thank you, Sherry. Mark, can I call on you? You've got a comment here that I'd like to understand what you're asking.
Yeah, so I believe there was some comments about combining goals and looking at registered apprenticeships as well as work-based learning all under the same umbrella. And I would just say, from an employer's perspective, when we offer work-based learning, it's often through a ride-along program, or maybe it's part of a diploma or certificate program that the community college is doing. Most of those students and potential employees that are going to be working for us for a period of time, they're giving us a trial. They're not sure exactly what they want to do yet, and they're exploring their options to see if, you know, a construction trade might be a good fit for them. Whereas apprenticeships are handled differently, at least by us and a lot of people in our field, is usually when we register someone for an apprenticeship and we start running them through a formal program, we've decided to invest in that person, and they're committed, saying that, yes, this is a goal of mine. I want to stay committed to this program, and it's treated differently than the broader work-based learning. And not to say that those can't turn into something just as effective as an apprenticeship. It's just from an employer's perspective, they really are two different things when in terms of how we handle it and who we assess whether or not might be a fit for something like that.
Very helpful, Mark. Okay, in the interest of time, we've got to go to the last one here. Thanks for all the feedback on those sector-based strategies. State government employment, where we have an existing goal, which is to reduce the state government vacancy rate to 15%. And we know that that's a challenge given our current vacancy rate. Anna is in north of 20 statewide, and that would require a lot of coordination and execution by the agencies themselves, in addition to the work that we need to do to really make these jobs more competitive vis-a-vis the private sector. What else should we be focused on in state government employment here?
So I think.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Dr. Cox.
I just quickly, the one thing I've talked a little bit about before is, you know, really utilizing the state government to be a leader in this eliminating the paper ceiling. So look at every job in state government and decide, does it really require a bachelor's degree or not? You know, as an entry level job in accounting with a 2-year degree and from a community college be an entry level, and then maybe advancing on to the next level be something that could eventually require a bachelor's degree or not. But I think doing that analysis and really looking at across all of state government, what are the real job requirements? A lot of business and industry has already made this shift and said, you know, here are the skills we need, not necessarily the degree or credential, but this is what you need to know and be able to do. So I think our state can be as an employer, be a leader in that field, and I'm not sure we are yet.
So I definitely think we're trying to be a leader in that field. We actually, I think it was last year, year before last, and I completely agree. It's definitely part of decreasing our vacancy rate that we want to bring folks in, not just based on the education or degree they have, but the experience they offer, or if there's experience they can gain on the job. But I think we're at, I think it's right at 89% of state government jobs can be obtained with education and experience, or a combination of education and experience, or if one has enough experience, just the experience itself, not requiring that degree. But that's an ongoing effort to make sure as classifications are developed or programs change, that continues to be analyzed as part of the classification that a job falls into, whether or not a degree is required, or if it is one where you can obtain the job through a combination of education and experience, or an equivalent amount of experience. I also think that, so I think this works as an overall goal, but within this, part of reducing our vacancy rate would be focusing on work-based learning, but we also have some particularly high vacancy areas, one of which would have good crossover, I think, with the private sector. That's in our healthcare areas. I think our nurses have a pretty high vacancy rate. But then for state government, and I think it is pretty unique to state government, I know our corrections officers have one of the highest vacancy rates in all of state government. And so I think to really make a dent in this, we have to focus on areas that are not going to have a high level of crossover to the private sector as well. So that's a particular challenge that we have, but I think there are lots of strategies that can go towards reducing the overall government vacancy rate. And Secretary Lilly, yes, it is right at 20% right now, I think.
Great. Let's move to our next slide. If we could, we need to wrap this section up here. We actually have a couple of new goals that we wanted to present to the group based upon the discussion that we had in the first meeting. One, based upon the presentation that we received from Jonathan Jareen at Commerce's Labor and Economic Analysis Division. It sparked a lot of conversation about labor participation rate, and in particular, labor participation rate for our prime working age population. So based on the baseline data that we get from or got from LEAD, we propose a new goal to increase that labor participation rate for that prime working age cohort. Second is to increase the percentage of families earning a family sustaining wage. We had that conversation about half an hour ago now, but we want to not just give people a job, but get people a job that lets them take care of their families and themselves and hopefully save some money. And then the third is launching statewide public outreach effort to share workforce development resources broadly with everyone. I think our teams collectively try to do a great deal of outreach and make sure that the people that we want into our programs understand what's available to them, how to access it. I know just talking about Commerce, we learned a lot of lessons in the pandemic about how we communicate with people who would ordinarily walk into our door and now communicate with us by text or by some other means. But I think what we're talking about here is a lot more of a marketing campaign about helping any number of people to find their way to a job that's going to help them get to goal number 12, a family sustaining wage. So let's talk about these three goals that we've proposed, and then we'll do a quick wrap up. Any feedback on these?
What for number 11 would be the goal to get to?
So we would need to get to that. I guess we need to come to that number. If Mayway or any of the lead team can remind us what we're at on prime age labor force participation rate.
Sure. This is Jonathan Jareen.
There's Jonathan.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Hey, Jonathan. Thanks for joining.
Of course. Not sure if I could just real quickly share my screen. I'm sorry, Andrew.
Go right ahead.
It'd be easier. Okay, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay. What about now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So yeah, following our conversation from the first meeting, I just wanted to show here in North Carolina, again, those labor force participation breakouts by age group. Typically, what you see reported on, you have these three different age groups. Our youth population, age 16 to 24, our prime age, 25 to 54, and then, of course, our older workers above age 55. For the specific goal, again, a big point I brought up in the first meeting, prime age participation is always higher than the other age groups. This is the time when most people are most productive at the height of their careers. In 2024, I'm looking at a yearly average. Prime age participation in North Carolina was at 82.7%. For our youth population, or youth and young adults, it was at 55.3%. And regarding this proposed new goal in the 16 to 54 population, I'm not sure what the combined percentage would be, but that's at least where we were in 2024. I do just real quickly want to show, and all this material should have been shared with you all after the first meeting as some follow-up material. And I'll just share the comparison by state, since that was another question that was coming up quite a bit in our first meeting. You can see that there's a lot of regional differences in prime age labor force participation across the US. It tends to be the highest in some of our Midwestern states like Minnesota, the Dakotas, Nebraska. Here in the South, we have lower labor force participation rates, at least for that prime age population. But in terms of our regional neighbors, North Carolina does have a higher rate than, say, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia, and this is based on 2024 data. But Lee will be happy to partner and provide some of those data and statistics as we go forward with this goal.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate that. And we can go back to Andrew's screen. And I think we're talking about combining, and I probably misused the language here, both the prime age number and then the 16 to 24 number to get to a higher number. I think we got a hand up. Is that Senator Settle? Or you got a hand up? Maybe not.
Oh, no, I had one. I wanted to make a comment earlier, but we moved past that point. So I'm good. Thank you.
Well, we always welcome your comments, Mr. Chair, and you can just break right in anytime you want.
Thank you.
So I think the bottom line is we've got to work to get to what the number is, both what's the combined percentage for 16 to 54, and then an achievable goal for that group. Any other thoughts on these three goals? All right, can we go to slide 26, please, to see everything all together, all 13? Go ahead.
Secretary, this is Kendall. Sorry if I could break in for just a second. One thing to add for the group's consideration is that goal 13 there around the public outreach effort is something that I think the governor was interested in exploring and getting the council's feedback on. And I think that's based on his sort of assessment that we have so many great resources and opportunities here in North Carolina, and just wanting to make sure that we're really being creative about how we maximize engagement among those. So just wanted to add that for the council's consideration.
Thank you, Kendall. Very important. So this is what we've got based upon conversation. I think in the interest of time, we will answer the question, what is missing? What can be removed in follow-up? As we were discussing, we talked about some combinations here and additional color on each of these, which staff will add in and reflect back in the follow-up materials for everybody to review. But look, we've got a lot to do here. This is an ambitious list of goals with a lot to it. Some of these are existing, some are new. So we want to make sure we've given ourselves and our partners something that they can work with here based on the work that we've been tasked with, and certainly those that we're going to present to the governor. So I'm way over my time now. We'll move back to President Cox to close us out. Dr. Cox.
We got too many screens up trying to find the mute button back up. So yeah, so I think again, just thank everybody for participating. We'll talk a little bit about next steps. So we're going to be asking for your feedback on the fully drafted goals here in the coming week via survey. So this email is going to be coming out from the staff. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll just note this between Secretary Lilly and Senator Settle and myself, we've been trying to do some outreach to all the members, asking for some specific feedback. And I know I've been collecting the feedback that we've been getting, and we'll get that back to staff here in the next few days. So if you have any specific feedback you'd like to share with any one of your chairs, please do that outreach. Let us know what you're thinking, and we'll be we'll definitely be receptive to that feedback. So, any questions or closing thoughts here from anybody before we wrap up today? All right, folks, we appreciate everybody's engagement and thanks for your work. I'll note again for the group, I'm going to be having to miss the May meeting. John Loyak will be ably filling in for me for that meeting, and I'll look forward to catching back up with you all at the June meeting. So thanks to all of you for your engagement, and be looking for those surveys coming out to you soon, and give us your feedback as quickly as you can so we can get it all put together. Secretary Lilly, any closing thoughts?
No, sir. Thanks again, Dr. Cox, and I want to turn it over to our other co-chair, Senator Settle, for any closing thoughts here.
I think it's been a great discussion, a lot of learning myself, traveling down to Raleigh and listening to these good comments and ideas. And there are many things there that I want to jump in on, but I'll wait till May. I just want to thank everyone, and thank you for your participation and engagement. It was, I think the governor had said we're going to make this the best state in the country. Workforce development. Thanks so much.
I'll just note, Senator Settle, for the record, the governor was in your fine home county of Wilkes over the weekend enjoying Merle Fest, as was I, and about 60 or 80,000 of our friends up there. Great weekend in Wilkes County with the Merle Fest. So I enjoyed seeing the governor and his family up there enjoying that festival. So just wanted to note that. Thought you would enjoy that as well.
Well, we do appreciate it. Spend all the money you can spend in Wilkes County. We need the tax dollars.
Absolutely. Well, they raised a fair amount this weekend, I'm sure. Thank you all. Thanks for your participation.
Thanks, everybody.
See you soon.